My name is Akuya also, and today my presentation is based on psychobiology of the stress. Objectives we're going to look at today is psychology response to stress and some possible psychological response. Research into the relationship between stress and illness. Biological and psychological method to reduce the stress, that is the Haven trade and drug therapy. Psychological response to stress and some possible psychological responses. Stress is a natural aspect of life that either promotes learning and growth or causes serious issue for us. Stress has a different meaning for different people depending on their situation. The first definition of stress was responded by Einstein. Stress is non-specific response of the body to any demand. However, over the years, a number of definitions has been put forward to cover the wide range of situations that arise. According to the Koch and Mackey, when an imbalance or discrepancy takes between perceived demand and perceived coping resource, then a state of stress exists. Stress can be positive or negative. Extra is the good stress associated with positive feeling and good health benefits, whereas stress, example like the negative stress, is associated with the negative consequence. Before stress arises, there has been a trigger, and that is the termed as stressor. A stressor can be defined in any event that disturbs or allosteric balance and can be both physical or psychological communication with older adults. In response to a stressor, there are three biological responses. The sympathetic endocrine medullary pathway, that is the SAM. Under this, a stressor is perceived through the sympathetic nervous system. These then trigger the production and release of hormones such as epinephrine by the adrenal glands. The SAM then interacts with chemical with the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. This triggers the fight or flight response to stress. As you can see, the diagram here demonstrates how the blood vessels and the brain and the sympathetic nervous systems work. Our next slide, we're going to look at the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal system, that is the HPA. This system directly influences the endocrine system to activate stress response. When a stressor is interpreted by the brain, the hypothalamus produces a hormone called the CRF, which stimulates the pituitary glands to secrete the ACTH, which also stimulates the adrenal cortex as part of the adrenal glands. The adrenal cortex then secretes corticosteroids, which help to increase energy level for a response of stress. As you can see, this diagram here shows you how the HPA axis works through the adrenal cortex as well. So this is the diagram. Our next slides, we're going to look at the GAS, which is generally called the general adaptation syndromes. GAS describe the psychological reaction that occurs in response to the stress in 3 stages. The alarm reaction stage, the hypothalamus signal the sympathetic nerves, which activates and stimulates the adrenal meridian to secrete adrenaline and noradrenaline, which help increase heart rate. The resistance stage. This is a stage sympathetic nervous system activates slowdown, and the level of glucocorticoid hormones are increased in the blood sugar, and these provide energy needed to resist stress. We go into the next one, that is the exhaustion stage. If stress persists, bodily resources become depleted. The adrenal glands now cannot perform efficiently. Blood sugar level drops, and the physical health is affected at this stage. As you can see, the diagram here show you the 3 stages and how resistance and the exhaustion stage works in the time. So that is the diagram we've seen here. Psychological response to the stress begin with an individual interpretation of the stressor. If the stressor is seen as positive, the individual might be motivated, alert, and ready to avoid danger. If a stressor is also seen as negative, that's the distress. Some possible psychological response could be anger, hostility, rare anxieties, irritability, depression, decreased concentration and memory, image of failure, helplessness, and withdrawal. Our next slide, we're going to look at the evolution of research into the relationship between stress and illness. The relationship between stress and illness has been studied extensively over time. Cognitive deterioration with age, mental illness, and disease manifestation have been shown to be associated with a long-term psychological stress. In addition, negative mental state like depression have been shown significant influence physical immune by increasing the production of stress hormones such as catecholamines. Students of stress are particularly increased in knowing more about stress cause and contribute to the stress. In light of this, research on stress and disease can be considered. Our next slides, we're going to look at stress and cardiovascular diseases. Stress can be shown to play a role in a number of behavioral risk factors for cardiovascular diseases. Stress itself can be a risk factor and can also influence other factors such as high blood pressure to trigger this disease. Students have shown that stress can cause a high heart rate, increased blood sugar, increased blood pressure, increased blood clotting, increased fat in the blood, increased cholesterol in circulation, increased fat and cholesterol deposition in the arteries, and also other arterial spines. These findings point out how stress is a powerful risk factor itself. Chronic stress has also shown to expose the body to dangerous amounts of stress hormones like adrenaline, which has also a potential of triggering heart disease. It can also cause an individual to engage in unhealthy behavior, example like smoking, which can also result in heart disease. Despite those important findings, the specific mechanisms through which stress increases the risk of heart disease is still eludes medical research. Our next slides, we're going to look at the stress-related illness and immune system. A number of studies has been done in relating to stress-related illness and the immune system. Study human response to stress by using the natural occurring situation exams. Blood sample from 715 medical students who were voluntary were taken a month before the examination. On the first day of the examination and after the student has been written the two papers, students were also given questionnaires to assess behavioral symptoms, including loneliness, life events, and other psychiatric symptoms. The two findings were reported. The first system response were weak in students who were feeling most lonely, asked and experienced some stressful life events and psychiatric symptoms such as depression. Secondly, the stress associated with a reduced immune response. Advantage of the study is that these studies were natural experiments. Also, it also showed association with the immune response, that's the negative corrected. And the independent variables used the exam stress is one which is a long-term form of stress. However, this study was unable to prove the caution that those ones were caused by the other. Cohen et al. Investigates the role of a general life stress on vulnerability of the common cold virus. 394 participants were assessed on the number of stressful life events they had experienced in the previous year. This degree of stress and level of negative emotions were also assessed. Participants were then introduced to the virus, leading 82% to become infected, and those infected developed into the clinical code were recorded after 7 days. It was then concluded that life stress and negative emotion reduce the effectiveness of our immune system, leaving the participants less able to resist the viral infection. Evaluating this study, there was no manipulation, no statement about the cause and effects that can be made. The study did not also identify the most important elements of the stress index anyway. And it is an index studies that were no measure of immune functions. Finally, the participants being in good health with no illness prior to the study. Our next slides, we're going to look at the evaluation of one biological and the psychological method used to reduce stress. Hardness training. Hardness is a psychological method that can help people to cope with stress. Its aim is to boost self-confidence and self-control so that individual can manage change. Kosaba believes that hardy people are better able to cope with stress. It consists of 3 parts, which we're gonna look at. That's the focusing. Teaching the clients way to recognize the sign of stress in the body and to be aware when action is needed. The other part is the reconstruction of stress situation. That's the client recognize the current way of coping and analyzing the previous stress events. Self-improvement. Clients learn to improve as a stressor asks a challenge to be taken control of. It has found out that many people engaged in the training develop low blood pressure and felt less stressed. However, it might be argued that hardening might not exist and that a low hardness score may be that the individual is negative, leading to negative effects of stress. Our next slide, we're going to look at the drugs. Our next slide, we're going to look at drugs therapy. It is an example of psychological method that helps in curbing stress. It involves the administration of drugs, which either slow down the activities of the central nervous system, that is the CNS, or slow down the activities of the adrenaline or non-adrenaline. Benzodiazepines is a form of drugs that works by stimulating the effect of the GABA, a neurotransmitter that shows the activities of the CNS. Serotonin is the transmitter that acts and the arousal effect on the brain. Too much of this leads to anxiety, whereas low level results in depression. Benzodiazepines work to reduce the effect of serotonin, thereby slow down the activities of the nervous system. Beta blockers are another form of drugs that work to reduce the activities of the adrenaline and non-adrenaline. Stress can trigger the arousal of the parasympathetic nervous system, and this can result in increased blood pressure and the heart rate. Beta blockers work by binding the receptor of the cell of the heart and and other parts of the body stimulate during arousal. This then results is difficulty stimulating those cells. The effect: blood pressure fell in turns means less stress on the heart. Drug therapy are effective in treating stress. An advantage is that it is easier compared to the psychological method, as it requires less time and also require little effort from the user. However, it can also have a serious side effect, such as dependency and increased tolerance, rendering them effectively for a long-term usage. Thank you. And these are my references. Thank you. Thank you. And my references are as follows.